At a stroke, the 600 takes Fiat from nowhere to credible contention in the Super Mini B segment. At first glance, it's a rather pretty supersized 500. Actually, it's a reskinned Jeep Avenger, but what's important is that the end result is very appealing indeed.
Setting off in this 600e isn't accompanied by a particularly arresting acceleration, which you do realise after a bit is down to the fact that the kind of rapid forward thrust that you'd expect from an EV is limited to the top sport mode. Now you'd have to manually select that right at the beginning of the journey to get this powertrain's full claimed 154 brake horsepower power output. Otherwise, the default normal setting or that frugal eco mode, well, there you're limited to a much lower figure of 107 brake horsepower. And that really isn't very much to push along nearly 1.6 tons of Polish assembled, Turin designed Latin real estate. Rather less encumbered is the alternative hybrid version of this car, which uses a 100 horsepower version of the 1.2 litre 48 volt hybrid powertrain we've seen in other small Stellantis group models. It's a clever setup. The 3-cylinder petrol unit works via a 6-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox whose casing houses the powertrain's DC inverter, the engine control unit and a little 28 horsepower electric motor powered by a tiny battery secreted beneath the front passenger seat. The battery stores the energy recuperated by the regenerative braking system in enough quantity, it's claimed anyway, to power the car for up to 50% of the time in urban travel, as well as for low-speed manoeuvring, reversing and the engine stop-start system. In theory, there is less pulling power than you get in the EV, 205 Newton meters versus 250, but that's based on the 600e using all its power, which, as I mentioned earlier, that electric model's drive modes rarely allow you to do. The 600 hybrid returns up to 57.6 mpg and up to 114 grams per kilometre of CO2. Whatever flavour of powertrain you decide on for your 600, you'll need to manage your expectations if you come to this car expecting it to feel like some kind of Fiat 500. This 5-door model is rather more softly sprung and comfort orientated, so don't expect engaging handling on faster, twistier roads. We don't necessarily have a problem with that. In fact, the supple ride is really well suited to our nation's often terrible tarmac, and it copes really well with the speed humps and potholes of urban travel. If that's all you ever attempt in a 600e, Fiat claims that up to 370 miles would be possible, but the combined cycle figure is 254 miles between charges. They take 27 minutes from 20 to 80% when you're hooked up to an appropriately rapid public DC charger. A 7.4 kilowatt home wall box, that would need 7.5 hours to fully replenish. Is this the most eye-catching mainstream brand small hatch that money can buy? Well, for us, this Fiat certainly vies with the Peugeot 208 for that title, although some shopping in the segment might prefer the rather less feminine style of, say, a Mini Cooper or a Volvo EX30. What's not in doubt, though, is that this is a far more effective attempt to supersize the visual values of the little Fiat 500 city car than its predecessor, the 500L. The size of this Fiat is somewhat deceptive until you see it in the metal. In pictures it appears almost family hatch shaped, but get up close and personal, it's very much a B segment Super Mini from the next category down. Where you more easily recognise the Fiat 500 electric parentage is here at the front, particularly with these pretty eyelid style colour coordinated panels on the LED reflector headlights, below which sit the curved kiss-shaped daytime running lights, which this Italian brand has rather made their own. The rear view is reminiscent of the 500X, but it has more sophisticated silver detailed LED tail lamps. Get behind the wheel and it's much easier to convince yourself you're at the wheel of something 500 derived. Well, until you take a look over your shoulder anyway. The bold 600 badge on the steering wheel boss here, the gear shift buttons and the colour coordinated mid-level fascia panel, they're all cues from the 500e, but actually the cabin architecture, like the rest of the car's engineering in fact, is actually Jeep Avenger sourced. Now, in some ways, that is good. It certainly means that you avoid the cramped cabin feel of that smaller Fiat, and unlike in a 500, you get separate physical climate controls rather than having to fish around through menus on the central touchscreen. This Fiat also shares the Jeep's 10.25-inch central touchscreen, which is paired with a 7-inch instrument display here. Build integrity from the Polish factory, it's okay, which means that it is pretty good for a small Fiat. But the quality of the materials used around this interior, well, that's nothing to write home about. There is, however, plenty of cabin storage space, and there are some fashionable touches too, like this lovely variant branded magnetic folding panel on the center tunnel here, the intricately stitched seats of this top La Prima model too. Time to take a look in the rear, and once you're inside, well, Fiat says that legroom and roominess in the back has been maximised here, and that's by moving the design's fundamental H points, and that apparently allowed for a gain of an extra 30 millimetres of legroom. Be that as it may, this does still feel like a car at the smaller end of the Super Mini size scale. There's really not that much legroom at all, and as an adult you're really going to be particularly pinched on knee space if the folk ahead of you happen to be long-legged. Let's finish as usual with a look in the boot, which on this EV is the only place that you'll have to store luggage because the ECM P2 platform doesn't allow for an underbonnet frunk. Now you get a powered tailgate on this La Prima model, and once it raises with either drivetrain, a 360 litre space is revealed, 5 litres more than the Jeep Avenger, which is about average for the class, and it's double what you'll get in a 500e. Fiat is at last back in the B segment with a credible market offering. Now, it's taken the EV revolution and a lot of Stellantis Group help to get it there, but if you like the brand and you have a fashion-orientated preference for your choice of small hatch, you may just feel here that the wait's been worth it.